They were the couple who overcame everything, or so it seemed. Zenovia Mallory and Lemarcus Haynes looked like the perfect match, bold, beautiful, and bound together by a love that had supposedly weathered every storm. From sweet kisses and carousels of Instagram posts to glowing tributes on birthdays and anniversaries, they curated a digital fairy tale that made thousands believe in second chances. But behind the ring lights and carefully posed smiles, something far darker was brewing. One secret. One obsession. And it would burn everything to the ground. How does a woman go from a doting wife to a killer? How does devotion curdle into rage so deep, so consuming, it spills over in blood? This isn't just a story of love gone sour, it's a descent into madness, a tale of control, denial, and what happens when someone refuses to let go, even when everything screams that they should. Before we uncover the haunting details of the Zenovia Mallory and Lemarcus Haynes case, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. You don't want to miss what happens next, because this isn't just a crime story. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes, the ones who say they love us most, are the ones we should fear. Zenovia Patrice Mallory was the kind of woman who made an impression before she ever said a word. With her pressed curls, bold lipstick, and sharp tongue, she was Tallahassee's version of a homegrown powerhouse, God-fearing, street-smart, and proudly self-made. Her salon, crowned and covered, sat on the corner of a modest strip plaza, but inside, it buzzed with regulars who came not just for touch-ups, but for truth. She was the kind of woman who'd fix your edges and your life in the same breath, quoting scripture between jokes and side-eyes. And on social media, Zenovia glittered. Not influencer-level famous, but enough for her audience to stay tuned in, waiting for her next post about faith, loyalty, and black love that could survive a Category 5. To her followers, she was the walking proof that being a strong woman didn't mean you had to be alone. She had Lemarcus. Tall, mellow, smooth-voiced Lemarcus Haynes. If Zenovia was fire, Lemarcus was the calm that didn't flinch under heat. He worked with broken boys and weary teens, spoke softly even when he was frustrated, and wore his faith like a well-worn hoodie, never flashy, but always present. The kind of man women praised online for loving a woman like her right. They met at a church revival in 2011, Zenovia shouting affirmations in the front row, Lemarcus clapping softly in the back. A year later, they were married. Their online presence was everything people wanted black love to be: healing, passionate, resilient. Couple selfies in their Sunday best, candid videos of Lemarcus braiding his goddaughter's hair, Zenovia dropping gems about staying 10 toes down even when it hurts. Their followers clung to every post like it was gospel. But inside their home, the truth was harder to filter. There were arguments. Not just lovers' quarrels, but stormy, shake-the-walls fights that left neighbors pausing their TVs. Zenovia's loyalty sometimes bled into obsession. Her love, at times, smothered. Lemarcus, in his quiet way, tried to keep things together, until trying became surviving. Friends smiled politely when asked about the couple. They balance each other, they'd say, which really meant, she ran the show, and he didn't argue. That balance, as the world would later learn, had long since tipped. And love, no matter how polished it looked online, had already begun to rot beneath the surface. Zenovia Mallory believed in fighting for what was hers. And Lemarcus, his love, his presence, his very being, was hers. At least, that's how she saw it. What started as devotion, the kind that made women nod approvingly and say, "She really loves her man," slowly twisted into something darker. She called it protection. Others might have called it possession. It started small. A Find My Phone feature that she activated without his knowledge. A quick skim through his messages when he left his phone unlocked. Unannounced visits to his job, where she'd smile at his coworkers and bring him lunch like a doting wife. It was love, she assured herself. Love meant knowing his schedule better than he did, keeping track of his whereabouts, making sure no one, no woman, ever got too comfortable in his space. To those on the outside, it looked like commitment. A devoted wife looking out for her husband. But Lemarcus felt the walls closing in. He confided in a close friend, voice low, weary. I feel like I'm being watched. Even when I sleep. The cracks in their marriage deepened over the years, but it wasn't until 2023 that they shattered completely. 12 years in, Lemarcus reached his breaking point. The fights had gotten uglier, her grip tighter. She went through his call logs, accused him of cheating if he stayed out even a minute past what she expected. The air between them felt suffocating. One day, without warning, he packed a bag, walked out of their home, and filed for divorce. Zenovia unraveled. At first, she pleaded. Come home, baby. We can fix this. When that failed, she turned to threats. If you leave, I swear on my life. The messages became frantic, then cruel. She flooded his social media with cryptic posts about betrayal, about loyalty being wasted on the wrong man. She tagged him in statuses meant to shame him, called him a coward, a liar. Then the rage took over. The police report later documented it in chilling detail. 2 a.m., Lemarcus walked out of his apartment to find Zenovia crouched by his car, a knife in her hand, slicing deep into his tires. When he confronted her, she didn't run. She stood, wiped her hands on her jeans, and smiled. If I can't have you, she said, voice eerily steady, no one will. By morning, Lemarcus had filed for a restraining order. The court granted it without hesitation. It was supposed to be protection. A legal barrier between him and the woman who once swore to love him forever. But some lines, once crossed, don't just disappear. Some wounds don't heal. And Zenovia? She wasn't done yet. March 27, 2024 was supposed to be quiet. Ordinary. Lemarcus had finally found a rhythm to his new life. He was showing up to work on time again, sleeping through the night without checking the locks twice, even laughing more freely. The duplex he moved into wasn't much, but it was peace, and after everything he'd endured, that was enough. He'd started going back to the gym, reconnecting with old friends, and yes, maybe, just maybe, seeing someone. A woman who wasn't from the church circle, someone who didn't know his past. Just clean slates and quiet evenings. That night, he'd grilled chicken, washed dishes, and FaceTimed his niece before heading to shower. He was winding down, towel slung over his shoulder, music low in the background. Meanwhile, across town, Zenovia Mallory was preparing. She hadn't posted in days, hadn't shown up to her salon all week. Most people assumed she was taking time to heal. But her mind had spiraled far beyond healing. That morning, she called her cousin Sherry, said she needed to borrow her car for a personal errand. No questions asked. Zenovia had always been dramatic. No one suspected a thing. By 10:47 p.m., surveillance cameras caught a silver Honda creeping down Lemarcus's quiet street. The streetlight near his mailbox had been out for weeks, a detail Zenovia likely noticed. She parked 2 houses down, walked calmly down the sidewalk, and slipped around the side of his duplex. There were no signs of forced entry. Investigators would later determine that the back door had been unlocked. Maybe he forgot to lock it. Maybe, in a moment of dangerous compassion, he let her in. The timeline, reconstructed by detectives, picks up at 10:52 p.m. Zenovia entered through the back. Lemarcus was in his bedroom. No signs of a struggle, at first. But then the living room told a different story. A toppled lamp. A broken photo frame of their wedding day. Blood on the edge of the coffee table. She'd come with a knife. A long, jagged kitchen blade wrapped in a scarf. On his nightstand, Lemarcus's phone recorded everything. The screen was cracked, the recording app left open. It was never meant to be found. But it captured her voice, trembling, angry, splintered with grief. You made me this way, she hissed. I begged you to love me right. Then came the sounds. A crash, glass shattering. A scuffle. Lemarcus's voice, panicked, "Zenovia, stop. Please." Then a sickening, wet thud. One. Then another. The dull sound of flesh giving way. A chair scraping across the hardwood as he tried to crawl away. He made it as far as the hallway. Blood streaked the floor in long, uneven smears. She kept coming. The autopsy would later reveal he was stabbed 52 times. 2 wounds to the neck. 1 to the chest, puncturing his lung. A final blow directly to the heart. Zenovia didn't flee. She sat beside his body for nearly an hour. When she finally stood, she wiped the knife on his bedsheet, kissed his cheek, and walked out the way she came. Calm. Almost serene. His neighbors didn't hear a thing. It wasn't until the next morning, when Lemarcus failed to show up for a youth mentorship event, that a friend drove over and found the back door ajar. The smell of iron hung thick in the air. His body lay cold in the hallway, phone still clutched in one bloodied hand. It wasn't just murder. It was the final act of obsession. A love story turned requiem. The scene was gruesome. Lemarcus Haynes lay face down, arms twisted beneath him, in a thick, congealed pool of blood that had soaked into the floorboards. The smell of iron, sweat, and something unspeakable clung to the air like a curse. His body told the story long before any coroner could. He had fought hard, begged maybe, tried to run. But love like Zenovia's didn't let people go. Not cleanly. Not quietly. He had been stabbed 52 times. Not quick, surgical jabs. These were wild, angry thrusts, each one echoing the chaos in her mind. His hands were nearly unrecognizable, torn and gashed from trying to block the blade. Blood dotted the hallway walls in a pattern only rage could create. A shard of mirror was found beside his body, cracked and coated in red. Investigators later speculated he'd grabbed it in desperation, using it to defend himself in those final moments. But it wasn't enough. The final wound, a deep puncture through his neck, was what killed him. It severed his carotid artery. That was the end. But Zenovia didn't run. The kitchen faucet was still running when officers arrived, lukewarm water gurgling down the drain, tinged pink. She had tried to rinse the knife, tried to rinse away the nightmare she'd just written with her own hands. It didn't work. Blood still clung to the blade. It clung to her hoodie, her sleeves, her fingernails. She could scrub all night, it would never come off. The 911 call had come from a friend of Lemarcus who'd gone to check on him. What they found was a crime scene too violent for words. Officers worked in grim silence as they secured the house, bagged evidence, took photos of pain that would never fade. Zenovia was found 3 hours later at her home, just 15 minutes away. She didn't run. Didn't hide. She sat cross-legged on the couch, still in the same black hoodie, soaked through with Lemarcus's blood. Her eyes were dry, but empty. Her thighs were wrapped in tissue and smeared with crimson, sloppy, desperate cuts she'd made with a box cutter. She hadn't cut deep enough to die. Just enough to punish herself. Or maybe to feel something. When the officers entered, she didn't flinch. Didn't ask why they were there. She looked up, eyes hollow, and asked only one thing. "Is he dead?" One of the detectives, a veteran of 20 years, nodded once. She exhaled. "Then now I can sleep." And with that, she lowered her head and said nothing else. The news of Lemarcus Haynes's brutal murder sent shockwaves rippling through the community and far beyond. Headlines blared, "Devoted wife slaughters ex in frenzied knife attack." The once picture-perfect couple, who had been heralded as symbols of love, strength, and commitment, became an emblem of something darker, obsession, control, and madness. People who had once admired Zenovia's posts about loyalty, marriage, and black love were left reeling. How could this happen? How could the woman they had seen as a beacon of faith and strength turn into a killer? Her social media followers were in turmoil. Some mourned, their hearts shattered by the loss of the woman they had once looked up to. Others were angry, furious that she had taken the life of a man who had so many hopes ahead of him. His followers, the ones who had been inspired by his gentle strength and work with at-risk youth, flooded the internet with memories of him, quotes about peace, forgiveness, and second chances. They couldn't reconcile the image of the soft-spoken mentor with the victim of such a savage, brutal act. Then came the voice memo. It was leaked within hours of the murder, sending a chill down the spine of anyone who heard it. Zenovia's voice, shaking with emotion, could be heard in the background, confessing the raw intensity of her rage. "You made me this way," she said. "I begged you to love me right." The recording was a chilling glimpse into the unraveling mind of a woman spiraling into madness. It was impossible to ignore the haunting words that followed, "If I can't have you, no one will." Debates raged online. Was this murder a product of a toxic love story gone wrong, or was it a case of a woman who simply couldn't let go? Some wondered if anyone could have seen the signs, if anyone could have known how deeply her obsession ran. Friends of Lemarcus pointed out how he had tried, over and over again, to make her see reason, but Zenovia refused to hear it. And when he had finally reached his breaking point and filed for divorce, she had turned from desperate to dangerous. Detectives began digging into Zenovia's past, and what they uncovered painted a chilling picture of a woman in psychological turmoil. They found her journals, pages filled with rants, scriptures twisted to serve her delusions, and notes of divine justification for her actions. "God gave him to me. Only I can take him back," she had written in one entry. It was clear that Zenovia had begun to view her relationship with Lemarcus as something beyond earthly love. She had come to believe it was ordained, a divine right. And when he tried to escape her grasp, it became her mission to make sure he couldn't. In testimony that would later send shivers down the public spine, Zenovia's cousin revealed how she had once overheard Zenovia ranting, her voice thick with bitterness and rage. "He thinks he can leave and be happy," Zenovia had said, "I'll make sure he can't." Those words, so simple and chilling, gave a glimpse into the depth of her obsession, a desire to destroy the very thing she could no longer control. The tragedy was no longer just about the murder itself. It was about the slow and painful descent into madness, the unraveling of a mind consumed by obsession and the failure of love to heal the wounds it created. Now, as the world watched, Zenovia's once respected name became synonymous with betrayal, rage, and the darkest sides of love. The trial of Zenovia Patrice Mallory was a spectacle of raw emotion, legal maneuvering, and a nation gripped by the search for answers. Zenovia's defense team worked tirelessly to portray her as a woman unraveling under the weight of a mental breakdown. They leaned heavily on her history of mental health struggles, painting a picture of a woman consumed by obsessive love, delusions of divine right, and suicidal ideation. They argued that Zenovia had lost control, that the tragedy wasn't premeditated, but rather the result of an unstable mind pushed to the edge. But the prosecution was unwavering. They didn't let her obsession or mental state overshadow the cold, methodical actions she had taken. They focused on the facts, the borrowed car, the premeditated breach of the restraining order, the calculated steps that led her into Lemarcus's home that night. They presented the evidence with precision, painting Zenovia not as a woman overcome by madness but as a person fully aware of what she was doing, driven by control, obsession, and a twisted sense of entitlement. Witness after witness testified against her, friends who spoke of her possessive behavior, acquaintances who had seen the subtle manipulation, and even family members who painted a picture of a woman unable to cope with rejection. They described Zenovia as someone who demanded loyalty to the point of suffocation, a woman whose love was never enough, always turned to rage when it was unreciprocated. The defense tried to make the case that Zenovia wasn't capable of understanding the gravity of her actions, but the jury saw through it. In a deliberation that lasted just 2 hours, they came to a unanimous decision. Zenovia Patrice Mallory was found guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated stalking, and criminal trespass. As the verdict was read aloud in the courtroom, there was no dramatic outburst from Zenovia. No tears. No regret. She simply sat there, her face a mask of stoic indifference. Her eyes fixed ahead, her mouth barely moving as if she were lost in some other world. Some in the courtroom claimed she was praying, as though seeking solace from a higher power for what she had done. Others swore they saw a faint smile tug at the corners of her lips, a chilling expression that sent shivers down the spines of those who witnessed it. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. It was the harshest sentence available, and yet, it seemed inadequate in comparison to the carnage Zenovia had caused. The life of Lemarcus Haynes was lost, his potential stripped away, his future cut short by a woman who couldn't bear to let go. And yet, Zenovia's expression never wavered. In the eyes of some, she had already found peace in the chaos she had created. As the gavel fell, marking the end of the trial, the weight of the tragedy settled over those in the courtroom. Zenovia, a woman who had once preached the virtues of love and loyalty, had become something else entirely, a symbol of love twisted beyond recognition. And as she was led away, the question lingered, was this a woman consumed by mental illness, or was it something darker, something more deliberate? The world would never fully know. But what was clear was that Zenovia's search for control had cost her everything, including her own soul. This wasn't just a crime of passion, it was a crime of obsession, of control masked as love. Zenovia couldn't accept life without Lemarcus, so she took his life to keep him close. Her devotion, twisted by insecurity and an overwhelming need for dominance, escalated into a destructive frenzy. What began as a relationship full of promises, Instagram-worthy moments, and the shared image of perfect love, turned into a nightmare, one that left a man dead and a woman forever bound to a prison of her own making. It's a haunting reminder of how possession, jealousy, and unresolved trauma can turn even the most celebrated love story into something monstrous. Do you think Lemarcus did everything he could to protect himself? Could the system have stepped in earlier to prevent this from happening? And how do we tell the difference between devotion and obsession, before it's too late? If this story shocked you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling tales where love turns lethal, and truth is buried beneath blood and betrayal.